Today's Terrific Talk episode is brought to you by Audible. Audible is a leading provider of premium digital spoken audio information and entertainment on the internet. Audible has an unmatched selection of audiobooks, original audio shows, news, comedy, and more. Today, get a free audiobook with a 30-day trial at audible.com/terrifictalk. One more time, get a free audiobook with a 30-day trial at audible.com/terrifictalk. Now, to the Sports Business Journal's John Ourand. Welcome to Terrific Talk. I'm Tom Anderson. Beautiful sunny day here from the Hoboken Studios in New Jersey. Thanks for checking out the podcast, whether you're listening on iTunes or straight off the free CLNS Media app. It's great to be with you today. I've got a fantastic guest. John Ourand covers television and the media for the Sports Business Journal. Really smart guy, a lot of great insights. He's a terrific follow. I'm really pumped to have him on today. Let me bring him in here. John Ourand, welcome to Terrific Talk.
Hey, Tom, how are you?
Good. So, John, I wanted to give our listeners kind of a chance to get to know you a little bit, how you've gotten to where you've gotten. So we'll go back to the beginning. Where did you grow up? And first and foremost, where did your love of sports come from?
Well, I am born and bred in D.C. So I've been a part of Washington, D.C., living here for, pretty much my whole life. I spent about 4 years in London, and spent 4 years out of College Park, Maryland, which is just outside the Beltway, so I guess that counts. And a couple of years in Washington State. But generally, this was home, and even when I was in those far-flung places, I always pretty much knew I was coming back here.
I went to school at American University, so I know D.C. pretty well, too.
You're right in our backyard, in fact. I'm right off MacArthur Boulevard.
Oh, wow. Cool. Nice. Great area.
So the funny thing was you asked me, where I got my love of sports. And I grew up, I'm a part of sort of a big Catholic family. So I have, 4 older brothers, and they all were into sports. My dad was into sports. So I sort of was watching sports through them. But, in my current role, which is kind of interesting, I consider myself almost less of a sports fan and more of a journalist and a journalism fan. And I can just tell you, sort of growing up with the Washington Post, and one of my earliest memories is Watergate, and watching my parents just sort of devour the paper, during that time. It would get delivered, they would run out and get it, and be fighting for the front page just about. Yeah. And just kind of watching that sort of craft, and the Washington Post sports section back when I was a kid, that was Tony Kornheiser and Mike Wilbon doing columns. I mean, it was just, everybody talks about the Boston Globe sports section as being, one of the greatest, and it was great. I'll put my money behind what I read at the Post, because they had a really great run for, a couple of decades there. You mentioned you went to the University of Maryland. Did you know you wanted to be a reporter then when you went to college? How was your college experience there? No, I was a moron. I just sort of went through classes, and I had no clue what I wanted to do. And it turns out, when I was taking sort of the 101 classes, when I would take math and science, I would probably get B's and C's, and when I would take English, I would get A's. And so that sort of directed me to what my major was going to be, and so I kind of figured out it was going to be a major, and with a major called an English major, and they also had a major called radio, television, and film. I was in a couple classes with Scott Van Pelt out there, who was an RTVF major. And so I was a double major out there, kind of doing English and communications, and when I graduated, what I felt I was good at, and what I was interested in doing, all revolved around journalism. So that's sort of how I got my start in the whole thing. So you graduate. I think your first job was actually as a sports reporter for a Gazette newspaper around D.C., and you kind of climbed the ladder there. What was your journey like there? Well, it's funny because I was with the Gazette newspaper, and it was a job covering high school sports. So I was covering the sort of Montgomery County, Maryland softball games or wrestling matches, and some football and basketball games, of course. But I quickly realized, especially at the Gazette, they always call the sports department like the toy department. Well, that was like the toys of the toy department. People, if I wanted my career to progress, wasn't going to happen through the Gazette sports pages. So after being there for about 6 to 12 months, I moved to started covering more sort of front page stories and started cutting my teeth on sort of bigger stories in the industry beyond sort of high school
You've been a really, really successful guy, and I like asking this of people who've made it to the level you've made it. Were there ever times in your career when you doubted yourself or questioned if you were making the right career choice?
Oh, yeah, it happens. It still happens. In fact, I love what I do, and it's a lot of fun. Especially at the beginning, and it's even worse now, I would think. The pay was bad, and the hours were long, and all of a sudden you saw some friends that you were growing up with, and they would be a lot more successful financially, and so you started to feel this sort of pressure going that maybe I should switch careers or switch jobs and do something that would pay a little bit more. I always tell the story that I turned 30 and I've been doing journalism at that point for about 8 years. And I was to my wife, and I was like, well, geez, I guess I'm a journalist now. I guess that's what it is. But those self-doubts, I think they still come in. I love what I do, but every now and then you always wonder if the grass is greener in some other field or some other area. But I think at this point it would take a lot to make me switch from what I'm doing.
Yeah. You've been studying the media for a long time, obviously. What advice can you give young journalists out there listening who want to work in the media one day? How can they best kind of prepare themselves?
Everybody says right, and I think that's partly true. But I every now and then I saved all my term papers from college, and every now and then I look at them, and I always thought I was a great writer, and I read them now and I just cringe. So it's more than writing. I think that I really benefit from writing with an editor or writing with people that give you instant good feedback, and that helps me figure out how to best write and how to best report. And so I think that the idea of just kind of sitting down and writing is one thing, but writing with while getting feedback is like the main critical thing to me. And also just make extra phone calls. Go to an event that you don't necessarily want to go to, because I think that networking and making sources and developing sources, even even in terms of trying to get a job, is so valuable. And I wish that I had done more of that when I was a young reporter, and certainly when I was in college. And I really respect some of the young kids that do that now.
It's great advice. A lot of people, as you mentioned, say, write. And other people say read a lot. Is there a book out there that you think, people should read if they want to get into this field? Do you have one book?
It's Drunk and White, The Elements of Style. No, I don't really have a book. I think that, one of the things, I pattern my columns when I write a quote unquote opinion column. I pattern them after what I read from Michael Wilbon in the Post way back when, because I thought that he structured his columns so well when he was writing here. And so I think that in terms of reading, I don't know if I have a book. I don't actually have a book that I would send people to, but figure out who writes that you really like and respect. And do more than just read them for content. Read to see how they structure their sentences. Read to see how they structure their stories, and sort of almost study the way that they write. And that would help more than just sitting down with a computer and writing.
Quick break to talk about our friends at Audible. Audible content includes an unmatched selection of audiobooks, original audio shows, news, comedy, and more from the leading audiobook publishers, broadcasters, entertainers, magazine and newspaper publishers, and business information providers. Audible got a great deal for you. It's offering listeners a free audiobook with a 30-day trial membership. All you got to do is go to audible.com/terrifictalk and browse the unmatched selection of audio programs. Download a title free and just start listening. It's that easy. Go to audible.com/terrifictalk. That's audible.com/terrifictalk and get started today. I just finished The Wright Brothers by David McCullough. Just finished Truman. It was like 1,000 pages long. Great books. I highly recommend them. Check them out on Audible today. It's the summertime. Get on the beach. Start reading. Use Audible. Now, back to our podcast with the Sports Business Journal's John Ourand. You've been covering ESPN for decades. Everyone now, of course, talking about the rights fees, the rights to the NBA games, baseball, Monday Night Football. All those prices are going up crazy. Then you got all the cord cutters out there. ESPN seems pretty committed to getting the rights to as many big live events as possible, and all the layoffs this year. But you're someone who studied them closely for a really long time. What do you think ESPN's plan is to kind of stop the bleeding here? Where do you think ESPN sees itself in 5 years?
That's a great question. I don't know. I'm not sure where they see themselves in 5 years. I think that one of the things that they're trying to do is at the end of this year, they're going to launch a direct-to-consumer product through its BAM Tech investment. So it's going to be what they call an over-the-top product, so you can sort of stream it for free. And that's they just kind of want to get a toehold. So if the cable industry all of a sudden does implode and people keep cutting the cord, and they can't keep going that route, they're really going to have to try to develop some sort of direct-to-consumer route that they can use. I also wouldn't be surprised if everybody's looking at Amazon and Google and Facebook, and those are sort of that's where the cable industry was about 20 years ago. And everybody's waiting for them to step in and really buy those rights, but they don't have TV production capability, so I can see ESPN partnering with some of them, and allowing them to have the streaming rights, and ESPN will keep the sort of television production rights.
Interesting.
I'm actually very bullish on ESPN. I think that they have some big problems that they're going to have to overcome. But they own a broadcast network, they own several really big cable networks, and I think that they're probably better situated for some of the disruption that's happening in the business than any other sports network right now.
Wow. John, this was great. Thank you so much for coming on today. Everybody look out for John's great work at the Sports Business Journal. Follow him on Twitter. His handle is @Ourand, OURAND_SBJ. John, thanks again. You were great.
Hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the ask.
Hey, if you want to listen to it, Audible has it. With an unmatched selection of audiobooks, original audio shows, news, comedy, and more, you'll find exactly what you're looking for. Get a free audiobook with a 30-day trial today. All you got to do is sign up at audible.com/terrifictalk. Again, for a free audiobook with a 30-day trial, sign up today at audible.com/terrifictalk.